Welcome and study with Tanzania Institute of Education.
Welcome to the geography section. My name is Mr. Daniel Julius. Today I would like to discuss or to share with you the topic of human populations. I did the topic of Form 4, the third topic after research and the natural climatic regions. Then previous time, we have discussed on terms and few characteristics that is related with human populations. I said a population is a number of organisms or a number of objects living in a particular area. Or it can be a population is a number of organisms and objects occupying a certain geographical area. Now, after knowing the meaning of populations, I said these populations will make you to be aware about the term human population. Then I said, when we talk about a human populations, here we are highly focusing on numbers of people living in a certain area in a given period of time. Or a human population, it can be referred as a total number of people occupying a certain geographical area in a particular time. When I said a geographical areas, it can be a village, it can be a district, it can be a region, it can be a country. Then again, I said the scientific study of human population is referred as demography. So after that, I said we have a few characteristics. I said we have characteristics of human population. So previous time we discussed the first and the second characteristic. The first characteristic I said is human population is dynamic. Human population is dynamic. Then I said human population change over time. So we have some of the variables. We have some of the variables that make human population to change. Then I said these variables, it can be birth, it can be death, and migration. So we have these three main aspects. Then I said birth, here it is highly focused on the number of live birth per year, per thousand of the populations. So when birth rate, whether is high or is low, increase on it or decrease on it, it can lead to the change in populations. The same to the death rate. The number of death per year per thousand of the populations, again, it can lead to the change in populations. Then I said here it can be either those peoples who are coming in or who are moving in, and those who are moving out. So it can be whether is immigration or emigrations. So these two forms of migrations, it can lead to the either increase in people when people are moving in. When people are moving out, it can lead to the decrease, but this one it can lead to the increase of people in any areas. Then the second character, I said human population is uneven distributed. Is uneven distributed. That means some areas is having high populations while some other areas is having low populations. For the case of East Africa, we have some of regions in which their populations is high because of several factors. For example, areas having favorable climatic conditions through the influence of rainfall and temperatures, areas having high rainfalls, areas having moderate temperatures. These contributed to the development of agricultural activities compared to those areas having abnormal, whether it is excessive temperatures or high temperatures, as well as very low temperatures. This discouraged human settlement as well as livestock keeping. Then, after knowing these two characteristics, we were remaining with three main characteristics which were not discussed in the previous lessons. So today, let's start with the third and the fourth characteristics. Then the third is that human population has age-sexy structure. Having age-sexy structure. So when we talk about an age-sexy structures, these refer to the proportion of the populations. Proportions of the populations in terms of their sex and age grouping. So when we are observing the populations, or this it can be the compositions of the populations. Very simple. Composition of the populations in terms of the age and the sex. That is referred as a population structure. Now, through having these age-sex structures, it can help the government in knowing the age of the populations. For example, most of the age group is ranging from 0 to 4, 5 to 9, 10 to 14, etc., etc. These are a good example, age group. While the sex here, any populations is having of two sex, that is male and female. So all this is the characters of the human populations. So through age and sex structures, now the demographers may establish the so-called a population pyramid. So it is through having of age and sex structures where we can develop the so-called a population pyramid. Now a population pyramid, it is the way of representing age and sex of a certain countries, whereby the pyramid, it can be of a different shape. It can be of different shape. And make sure that the age, they are supposed to be at the center of your pyramid. For example, it can be 0 to 4, 5 to 9, then 10 to 14 until the nth ones. Now, from the right or from the central axis, it is represented by the numbers of female. So females, they are found at the right of the central axis, while the male, they are found at the left of the central axis. Now, observing of these pyramids in which their base is broad, having of a broad structure, this indicates that a country is having high birth rate. But this it is mostly common in sub-Saharan African countries. Sub-Saharan African countries. Those countries which is found in Saharan Desert or south of Saharan Desert. My student, as I said, through the population pyramids. Through population pyramids. Someone may interpret or may get the interpretations of numbers of dependency ratio. That is one. Dependence ratio. Dependence ratio, it can be referred to the proportion of people who are not involved in any productive activities to the one that is involved. Here we are highly focusing on numbers of people who age ranging from age 0 to 14. Those are children who are not involved in any productions activities, plus the aged people, that is the age 65 and above, over the working populations. Now, when we talk about the working populations, are those people who are involved in any economic activities. That is age 15 to 64. Now, through knowing that systems, the government can identify the numbers of dependence ratio. Now again, through the population pyramids, someone may get the number of death and birth rate, whether it is high or low, death and birth rate. For example, from our pyramids, the pyramids is having a broad structure. That means their base is broad, indicating that there is high birth rates, there is high numbers of children, while at the top the pyramid is narrowed. The narrowed structures indicate that the death rate also is high. Then the third, it can determine the life expectancy. Life expectancy. Now here, the life expectancy, this refers to the average numbers of years that a person is expected to live in a certain area. So the average number that someone is expected to live in an area or in a given area, it can be referred as a life expectancy. So this can be all derived from the population's pyramids, or the pyramids which is having a broad structure. But having a pyramid in which their structures is narrowed at the bottoms and broad at the top, it is a vice versa. So this, it is a pyramid in which their base here, it is narrowed. They are just indicating the birth rate is low. Now, what caused the birth rate to be low here? We have several factors. Some of the Scandinavian countries, they have decided to adopt family planning as the programs of controlling the birth rate compared to the third world countries, whereby most of the third world countries, for example, the first pyramids, some of the countries, they have decided to adopt family plannings, but not for the purpose of controlling populations. The main purpose there is to implement the human rights as well as to improve the maternal health, and not the aims of controlling the populations. But here you see at the top, it has a broad structures. Now here the broad structures, they indicate that the life expectancy is high. So if the life expectancy is high, it indicates the death rate is low, etc., etc. So all this, it can be derived from the age, sexy structure. That's what I said, one of the characters of the human populations is having of age-sexy structures. Then another characteristics is human population. Human population face problems. So it face different problems. So we have different problems that face the human populations. Now I want to talk about populations problems. This refers to the difficulties. This refers to the challenges that is facing human populations. What are those problems? We have different problems that is facing human populations. For example, disease, whether it is sexual transmitted disease, it can be malaria, it can be other disease which can affect the life of human being. It can be drought, it can be environmental pollutions, it can be earthquakes, etc., etc. That's why I said the human populations face problems. And the last characteristics here is that human population differs in level of science. Level of science and technology. They are just different in the level of science and the technology. Here, it means that some of the countries, they have attained high levels of technologies. Some of the countries, they have high level of development compared to the other nations. For example, you can't compare the levels of technologies attained by Chinese compared to the sum of African countries. So having of high technologies, this contributed to the full utilizations of resource. For example, in extracting of minerals or cultivating of large areas by using tractors and other machines, the using of improved seeds, the using of fertilizers and insecticides. These have been contributed to the developments as well as improvement in science and technologies. But in other areas, for example, most of the LDCs, still most of their countries, they are suffered from low levels of development due to the low levels of science and technologies. That's why you see most of their resources, they are remaining idle. Most of their resources are not fully utilized because of using low levels of technology. For example, the using of hand hoes in cultivating large areas, and still people they are regarding that agriculture is the backbone of their economy, while the majority of peoples in rural areas, they are using hand hoe, or the using of low quality seeds which cannot produce high products or which cannot produce high quality products compared to some of the European nations which use high quality seeds, which use improved machines in cultivating large areas, etc., etc. So here for the case of human populations differs in the level of science and the technology. It can be they differ in the levels of development of science and the technology. Or they are differed in the levels of science and technologies, or the levels of development. So all these they are regarded as the main characteristics of human populations. After seeing the characteristics of human populations, now let's see the importance of studying human populations. And I said, through studying of human populations, the studying of human populations provide information that is concerning with the populations of a certain areas. Now, most of the information is derived from the population data. We have the so-called population data. Then I said in the previous times, I want to talk about the population data. These are fact informations that is dealing with the populations. Fact informations that is concerning with the populations is referred as a population data. And these population data can be collected, can be gathered through various sources, whether it's primary source or is a secondary source. But the commons here we can use the population census. It can be one of the source of getting the informations. It can be vital registration. And the last one is sample survey. This help in getting the informations or help in collecting of the informations that is dealing with the populations. Now you can use those advantages, you can use those significances of the population data to write some of the importances of studying the populations. Now through knowing these population data, now you can see those importance. So one of the importance of studying human populations is that it can help someone to know the population size of a certain countries. For example, through studying of human populations, someone may know the population size of Tanzania. For example, the estimated populations of Tanzania is 59 millions. Now, this is one of the importance of studying the populations. Now, human populations tell us the population size, whether in terms of age and sex. And I said, for the case of our nations, for the case of our countries, the population size estimated is 59 millions. But the second ones, through studying of the populations, someone may know the marital status of people in a certain country. In a certain country. That means that through having of a population pyramid, the population pyramids. I said one of the importance of the population pyramids is that it provides informations. It provides informations of people in terms of their age and the sex. But second ones, these population structures, it can provide information concerning with the marital status. Here we are highly talking about numbers of people who are single or married, or it can be divorced, or those other peoples in a nation. How many males, how many male involved in marriage, how many females involved in marriage, divorce which occurred in a populations, widows, etc., etc. But it is through the populations, the studying of the populations, someone may be aware about the rate of dependency ratio, knowing the numbers of dependency ratios, number of people who are not involved in any productions activities compared to those who are involved. And we said that the dependency ratio also it is determined by observing the numbers of people who are not involved in productions, for example, age 0 to 14, plus those aged people, aged populations, the age 65 and above, over the total populations who are involved in productions activities, the age 15 to 64. This, it can help the nations to know the numbers of dependence ratios. But again, the importance is that it can help to know the numbers of birth rate and the death rate, to know number of birth and the death rate in a given area. Remember we said one of the character of the populations, or one of the characters of human population, is that it can change over time. It can increase or decrease over time. Now, through knowing the numbers of birth rate and death rates, someone may be aware about numbers of peoples added in a populations or numbers of peoples decreased in a population. Not only birth and the death rate, also it can include as well as what? Migrations. Because the additions of people or the increase of numbers of people in an areas, it can be caused by three main variables. Then those three main variables, it can be migrations, it can be birth rate, or it can be death rate. Migrations here is whether is having of immigrations, those people who are moving in, or it can be emigrations, those people who are moving out from their areas. So if people are moving in, they are moving in, this it can lead to the increase in the populations. But when they are moving out, their population, it can decrease. But for the case of birth rates here, it can be high or it can be low. Now, what caused the birth rates to be high or to be low? It can be caused by several factors. And these birth rates here, I have already explained that these refer to the numbers of live birth per year per thousand of the populations. And I said most of the LDCs, those less developed countries, the birth rate is high because of several factors. We have several factors that lead to the increase in birth rate. For example, early marriages, it can contribute. It can be forced marriages, it can contribute. Polygamies, it can contribute. And the failure to adopt family plannings. Or some of the countries in sub-Saharan African countries, they have decided to adopt family plannings, but not for the purpose of controlling populations. They have decided to adopt family plannings as the way of implementing the policy of human rights. They have decided to adopt family plannings for the purpose of improving maternal health, etc., etc. But for the case of highly developed countries or those metropolitan countries, their populations is well controlled because of the using of family planning techniques and other mechanisms of controlling populations. And the last ones, but not least, is that it can, the studying of the populations, it can help the government in planning. Here it can help the government to plan in distributing or in provisions of the social services after knowing the population's pyramids. For example, if the government knows that their population's pyramids is broad at the base, here it means that there is high demands of schools, there is high demands of health centers, there is high demands of it can be dispensaries and the hospitals, because it indicates that there is high numbers of children in a population. But when it is narrowed at the tops, it indicates that the life expectancy is low. So the government may find the alternative ways of increasing, or it can be increasing or improving the living standard of their people. So it can help in planning. So it can be planning in whether providing the social services needed by the populations available. It can be planning in solving the problems facing the populations. For example, here we said, again, here the dependency ratio is high because there is high numbers of children compared to the numbers of working populations. So the government also may plan on the ways of reducing the dependency ratio, the ways of reducing birth rates, as well as the ways of reducing the death rates in populations. And the last ones are through studying of these population studies. The studying of the population studies provide room to know the numbers. It can be the number of, it helps to know the age and the sex structure of the population. Now, this is not similar to that of the second one, the marital status. Here we are highly focusing on knowing the numbers of people in terms of their age and the sex. Here in marital status, here we are highly knowing the number of males who are married, the numbers of females, the numbers of widows in a population, as well as those divorced which occurred in a population. Here is only knowing the numbers of male and females in a population, but in terms of their age. So this is going to be some of the importances of studying the human populations. So dear students, after observing all the aspects here from the first concept, that is meaning of the populations, meaning of human populations, characteristics, and the last areas, that is importance. It is my hope now you are able to answer any questions that is related with the human populations. So before we end up our lessons, let's provide some of assignment to you. 2 questions. That is the first. Then the second, explain the role of human population can be in relation to the but can be explain the roles of studying human population. Then here the point is 4 points. So, dear student, again, I would like to say thank you very much for your audience, and let's end up here. The coming periods, we are going to discuss on population distributions. Again, my name is Daniel Julius. Thank you.